Alright, something a little different today. Like Elden Ring, I like Battlefield quite a lot. So, I obviously played the beta this past weekend, and I have some thoughts in no particular order. Breakthrough on Liberation Peak. There was no thought put into this. This was not play tested. You can tell this was not play tested. The first and last sectors are nearly and effectively impossible to take, respectively. I have never seen the attackers win on this map. Not once. The attackers can usually bulldoze to the last sector if they make it through the first sector, but they cannot take the last sector. The defenders spawn directly behind the cap zone, while the attackers spawn all the way back down at the bottom of the hill. Now, if it were the same for the defenders, if they also had to spawn back down at the bottom of the hill on the other side, it might be a different story, but as it is, they're simply impossible to attrit. Even the most incompetent defending teams I have seen, who got rolled all the way back to the last sector and gave the attackers max tickets, simply cannot be killed fast enough to keep them off the point. Granted, this seems to partially be a fluke of my experience. I've seen a lot of people not even mention the last sector on this map when critiquing it, because they seem to have never seen the attackers get to the last sector, because they always get spawn trapped on the first one. That's how bad it is. Assault needs a little bit of a buff. Now, maybe giving them the spawn beacon, which they're going to do at launch, will correct this. I just thought I'd reiterate the point, because as it currently stands, their one trick is that you get two primary weapons. The problem is that you only get half ammo for each, and while giving you two primaries is supposed to give you tactical flexibility, the thing is, you may not necessarily be running into the tactical situations that each weapon you're carrying is suited for on an equivalent basis. So if you're getting into a lot of, fights outside of point-blank range, where you need to use your assault rifle rather than your shotgun, you may find yourself quickly running out of ammo for those fights and having to rush in with your shotgun even when it might not be optimal, because that's all you have ammo left for, because you can only carry 3 mags for your assault rifle. People might bitch, but I think for this tactical flexibility thing to actually work, both weapons need a full ammo load. Speaking of the shotgun, it is overpowered in CQB, but nerfing it needs to be done extremely carefully, because the trap that everyone always falls into in nerfing weapons is they just make them worse. They make them worse to use, and it makes them less fun to use. The shotgun right now is really fun to use, so it needs to be nerfed in a way that makes it still enjoyable to use, but does not invalidate other weapon choices. I think the way to do that is to nerf the pump speed and the reload speed. Not the spread, not the accuracy, not the range. That way, it turns into a skill cannon. So, you can one-shot anybody in CQB with the shotgun. But, if you miss, you're dead. If there's more than one target in front of you, you're dead. So basically, the shotgun will be a tool for higher accuracy players to dominate individual opponents. If you want to be able to take out multiple opponents in quick succession, or you're a lower accuracy player, that's where the SMGs come in. And that would maintain a use case for both. Whereas right now, the shotgun has the clear advantage. Unlocked weapon selection is actually a really good idea. They shouldn't do away with that. Because all locking weapons to classes means is people are most likely to select what class they play based on what weapon they want to use, rather than either what gadgets suit their playstyle or what the situation calls for. Not everybody's going to want to run around with SMGs all the time, so if the engineer were locked to SMGs, people probably won't play engineer as much, which means You're going to run into a lot more situations where there's a tank marauding through your lines and nobody's doing anything about it because nobody wants to be stuck with an SMG. At the end of the day, it just means that you're making your class selection based on either playstyle or situation, based on the gadgets, the abilities, rather than what weapon you want to use, so that there's no conflict, which then allows you to tailor each of those things to your playstyle or your situation. I do think it's too easy for attachments to neutralize recoil on guns that are supposed to have high recoil, thus invalidating a lot of the use case for low recoil guns, because higher DPS guns tend to have higher recoil, but if you can just neutralize the recoil with recoil control attachments, that kind of eliminates the use case for the lower DPS but more controllable weapons, right? Like, in theory, people who have better recoil control should use the higher DPS weapons to get even more out of them, and the people who are not good at recoil control will get more out of using the lower DPS weapons because they can keep them on target. The situation now is that there's not much incentive for anybody to use the lower DPS weapons because you can relatively easily laser any of them with the right attachments. So I think the skill floor on recoil control needs to be made higher so that the lower DPS, lower recoil weapons have more of a relevant role in the game. Now, it's not necessarily fair to blame Battlefield 6 for this, because it's been in every Battlefield game, and it's never been a good idea. But I'm going to complain about it anyway, because I still wish somebody would get rid of it. Now, it's not as bad as it has been in prior games, but it still exists, and I don't want it to exist. Cone of Fire Bloom. Combining aim-down sights with Cone of Fire Bloom is irritating as fuck, because the weapon sight obscures the Cone of Fire. You can see it in hipfire. If you hipfire a weapon, the crosshairs expand, so you can see that holding down the trigger makes your gun less accurate. It's like an abstraction of your character losing control of the gun as they just hold down the trigger and it recoils all over the place. But when you're aiming down sight, what you would expect is that holding down the trigger makes it recoil all over the place, and then you expect, okay, if I can control the recoil and keep the sight on target, then I should still be able to hit the target. But no. Because even if you can, the invisible cone of fire that's sort of abstractly representing your character's inability to control the weapon invalidates your ability to control the weapon, and so your shots still miss because there's a cone of fire that's getting ever bigger, but you can't see it. Either get rid of ADS and just have the cone of fire as a circular reticle on screen that gets bigger as you hold down the trigger, so you know what the gun's doing and how inaccurate it's becoming as you fire it, or get rid of the cone of fire bloom and just have the gun suffer from increasing recoil that gets harder and harder to control as you hold down the trigger. So that at least if you can manage to control it, your bullets will still go where your fucking sight is pointed, to the extent allowed by the weapon. Obviously, each weapon should still have an inherent fixed spread to it, right? Obviously, like a submachine gun should have like more shot dispersion than a sniper rifle, but it shouldn't increase magically with every shot you fire. Finally, a few points on visibility. While realistic, the whole your character's eyes adjust to different light levels thing, realistically, you could also just invalidate this by taking off or putting on sunglasses, so really they should just get rid of it. But outside of that, complaints about visibility are really just cope by people who want the game to be a 1v1 gunplay skill test and hate the idea of being asked to, say, look around for a couple seconds and pixel hunt for potential threats because their dopamine receptors are too fried to sit still for any length of time. The game already gives you 3D spotting, which, to be clear, it shouldn't. Please, I don't expect them to get rid of that, but I wish they would. The least you could do is spam the spot button to try and spot targets instead of complaining the enemy players aren't glowing or something. And hot take, as a final point, scope glint is dumb. It looks dumb. It was always dumb. And it only exists to single out snipers just because some people really hate getting sniped. All it does is penalize finding a good hiding spot or vantage point. Because the kill cam already outs you. The scope glint is just there so that they can't get the drop on anybody. Right? Nobody applies this logic to shotgunners. Nobody says shotgunners need to have their position marked on the minimap at all times so they can never surprise anybody from around a corner. So why are snipers so special? Get rid of it.